Bee removal. If you're here, frankly, I'm a little worried about you. There's probably something wrong with you. No, who's done one? Who's done one? Do a lot of them. Professional. Just keep your hand up. Not a professional. Who wants to? Okay. All right. I'm going to try to convince you out of it. This is just not the place. Don't do it. No. My work with bees and bee removal. So I started in 2013 I was just like a nice little beekeeper. I didn't even have the pith helmet. I just had a baseball hat and a veil, and I was living in Idaho, and I got bees, and I just loved it. I moved back to Texas in 2014, and then it turned into this thing, right? So I started doing bee removal, started capturing bees, got totally fixated on it, turned into a business, which has been wonderful. Learned so much, and then it's just gone this other way. So now I'm like, I feel like I'm this picture right here, it's not this image isn't that great, but I was going through some mansion and they had bees, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I was covered in dirt from head to foot, and I got a headlamp on, and I looked like a coal miner from the 1920s, and I said, good God, what have I become? Like, this is ridiculous. So I'll tell you right now, the trajectory of being a bee remover is kind of a tough one, right? I think we start off, we buy equipment, we're obsessed with bees. How many of you are on TikTok or YouTube and see Erica Thompson, the Texas Bee Works, the scooping bees lady, and she's so zen, she's so cool. Dirt Rooster, right? There's some amazing bee, and you can go down that rabbit hole, and then we find free bees, right? Water meters and swarms. That's what got me into this. And I really want to warn you, there are no free bees. like it just sounds like a great idea, but there's nothing free about it. And we'll talk a little bit about that. A lot of benefits to bee removal as a beekeeper. First of all, it's really cool. It's like the neatest thing. You get to see bees in their native environment. Every job is an adventure. How many of you have seen our Goofy TV show on PBS? Anybody seen some episodes? So we got a TV show based on that. So I was doing bee removals, and this guy was seeing me post them on Facebook and YouTube, and he said, this is crazy what you're doing. He said, how many of these calls you get? And I said, I get 2 to 3 calls a day, depending on the time of season. It's crazy. So he said, all right, we got to document this. I love documenting it. I love telling these stories because every job is a total adventure. And so a lot of value there. You get to really see bees doing what bees do. Jumping into bee removal like I did is a real fast track to improving your beekeeping. You're gonna be finding queens. You're gonna be doing stuff that your average beekeeper isn't gonna do for a while or until they get big. But you're jumping into these crazy scenarios. You're dealing with Africanized bees. You're dealing with unknown genetics. So it's truly an adventure. And you can grow your apiary quickly. I grew from zero to 50 in a very short time, and it was all. And for my first 4 or 5 years of beekeeping, all I did was capture bees. I was so proud of myself. I bought a few packages and nukes, but I really just got feral bees and let them and walk away split. I was pretty proud of that. Okay, there's some bummers to this job. I'm serious. Texas is hot. My wife says it like this: hot. It's hot. So bees sting. It hurts. If you've seen, some people have seen my little bee mobile out front, the yellow. Don't look inside that vehicle. It is trashed. Bee removal is a messy business. Even if you got a pickup truck, you're gonna have a mess on your hands. Client relations. Dealing with homeowners, business owners, landowners, people who don't know a lot about bees and what we're doing, and they're in a crisis situation, and you're the guy, and they don't want to pay and whatnot. And we'll talk a lot about that. That, to me, is a real challenge. Odd hours, emergency calls. I'm on the phone right now with a guy I did a removal from a week ago. He says, I've got a lift right now that's going back, and your bees are still there. You better get here by 5 o'clock. And I said, that ain't going to happen. So it's tough, right? You get into these difficult situations. So, and I was kind of weighing the pros and cons as I was thinking about coming and talking with y'all. And it was like the things I need, and like the ledger is like cordless tools, hand tools, bee vac, insurance, bee gear, like boxes. and then you start getting more bees, and you need more, and it's all beekeepers have this issue. You're constantly keeping up with hardware. Well, bee removers have the same thing. Your nights and weekends, right? Your sanity, and then there are freebies. So again, if you remember one thing from this presentation, there are no freebies. Okay. Here's me, and I'm like, ooh, look, it's free bees, and my accountant's like, what? He's like, those bees aren't free. This is my conspiracy theory. This is how I get free. There's no great way to get free bees. So I want to walk you through just the process. It starts with the call. This is where the homeowner goes, oh no, I've got such and such a critter, right? Let me say, I spend a lot of time on the phone with people. There's some red flags right out the gate. And I try to be kind to homeowner, because this is a person who's hurting. They're not calling, and they somehow found me, so I should be, my business is my customers. So I want to take this guy who needs me today. He's important to me. So I'm going to do everything. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to figure out a way to serve my customer. But the customer is not always right. The customer is not always knowledgeable, right? So when this person calls and tells me they have bees, but they're not bees, right? Not bees. So I have to decide how I want to manage that. Red flags. Hey, some of y'all who've fielded these calls know this. I got some bees over here. You can come over and take them if you want them. I had a guy try to sell me bees from his garage wall. He said, $150. You can cut them out. They're all yours. And I said, sir, I have the bad news. It goes the other way. You'll pay me to. What? I get a lot of, I don't want to kill them. I don't want to kill them, but. So it's like they're holding the gun to the bees. I don't want to kill them, but you better get over here real quick. And I think it was Steve Butler, who's our like number one bee remover guy in the state of Texas. Somebody said, if you don't get over here and kill these bees, take these bees, I'm going to kill them. He said to the lady, ma'am, that is between you and the Lord. So I am not the arbiter of bee health. I'm not the bee fairy. I'm a business, and we can talk a little bit more about that. I have a lot of folks who say, I've been spraying them for a month with Raid, and they're still there. Now I want to save them. I feel like I'm a conservationist. And so I used to make an issue about people who've used any kind of chemical or sprayed. Now I just go get them. I'm going to take the bees out. They can't kill a hive with spray, typically, so I'll come and do that. Then there's my husband says they're this or that kind of bee, and I think they're from Africa. I had a lady tell me they're German bees, and I said, how do you know? And she said, my husband said. I said, you don't. So again, I don't want to be a jerk. So the way I do it is I turn the tables, and it's a really important piece of that conversation. I'm the guy who knows about the bees, right? So I'm going to turn the table, and I do that by asking appropriate questions. So, hey, and no one ever says no to this question. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your situation? Go ahead. And off I go, right? What are you seeing? So control the question. You can waste a lot of time on the phone with nervous homeowners. And I think when I started doing this, I used to spend a lot more time trying to describe what bees do because I was enthusiastic about it. But I don't waste my time to kind of explain bee biology to a nervous homeowner. I want to find out what I need to know about their situation and then give them a solution. So are you in danger, first of all? Are you in danger? Are you being stung by bees? Have you been stung? Do you own the property? I don't know how many times I've had calls. I got bees and I'm scheduling an appointment, and then I'm like, well, wait, what's the address? Oh, it's my neighbor's address. Let me get it. It's your neighbor? Yeah, no, these aren't in my tree, but he said we could maybe do something, but he won't pay for it. So make sure it's property that you can go on and you have permission to go on. I ask people to tell me exactly what they're seeing. Photos, very helpful. So, with bees build in a cavity, so we know they're going to be in a cavity of some kind. Hollow of a tree, in a soffit, in a wall, under a shed. Or is it a swarm? Is it a big cluster of bees? So identifying that, I'll ask the client, take photos for me. But the one thing, the moment I start talking to a customer on the phone, I am now on scene in my mind, right? So I don't want to send somebody out to go take pictures of bees and get close to it and get stung. So if you can safely take pictures, if you already have taken pictures, send those to me. Avoid wild goose chases. It's just a pain to get out there and find out they're not bees. I now charge a service fee, and I've done it. I've said, that sounds like yellow jackets. No. I know what yellow jackets look. I was raised on a ranch. It sounds like yellow jackets. Okay, well, come out. It's $50 for me to come to your house. Okay, I show up. Yellow jackets. $50, please. Like, it's a terrible feeling, and I don't want to be that guy. So I really try to work with the client, identify what they got before I jump in the car. Also, know your critters, right? So we just heard Dr. Delaplane using much more profound vocabulary than I can talk about native pollinators. So know what else is out there, right? So we've got our paper wasps, hornets. Do y'all run into, wherever you are, we get tons of Mexican honey wasps. We get these all over I actually kind of like them, and I'm not covered under my insurance to deal with Mexican honey wasps. They're a pollinator. We're kind of on the north end of their territory. They form a great big ball. They do have honey inside that paper mache ball, but as bee removers, I don't deal with paper mache. If at the moment it's paper mache, that is not something I deal with, except for Mexican honey wasp. I got a guy who likes them. So I take them down, I take them to this guy, we put them in a nature area. They're wonderful little pollinators. You can just net the whole thing. But like I said, I do it as a favor, as a volunteer thing. They sting like heck. They hurt, and they are nasty little critters. Bumblebees. We had a run a couple years ago on this one it's called a melon bee or a squash bee. One of the episodes of our show, they sent us out to a call, and there was just a whole sandy area with bees popping up out of the ground. And the moment I hear coming out of the ground, that's not our honeybees, right? Our honeybees need a cavity. Well, there was that year, two years ago, in my area, there was a run on these melon bees, and they're solitary, ground-dwelling, and they form little neighborhoods. And they're called gregarious bees, and they're like suburbanites, right? They build their little houses next to each other. And it looks menacing, but you can just walk right over them. So I talk a lot of people into how they might deal with something other than bees, but not an exterminator, right? Once we get into anything extermination, I've shown up for yellow jackets, and the lady said, "Could you just whack them?" And I'm like, I'm not licensed. So I'm part of our Texas Association of Professional Bee Removers, and that's part of our ethic. We can't act as exterminators. I can do it at my house and do paper wasps and whatnot, but not on a professional basis. However you're doing bees and bee removal, I think you gotta really think about the business of bees on a couple of levels. First of all, just personal protection. Are you insured? And we've got some great insurance companies right over here that they know bees, and they know bee removal, and they know all the exposures you might have. And are you registered with the TAIS? You're supposed to get this intrastate permit to transport bees. That actually puts you on the list for whatever county you're in. How much are you going to charge? That's a question too. So I started out, like I said, there are no free bees. I started out doing this for free. You don't have to do many bee removals to realize this is hard work. It's pretty miserable. So I need to compensate myself. There's a lot of overhead. I'm going to buy insurance so that I'm covered. What are you going to charge? And so it's nice to talk to other removers in your area. We have this new professional association we're talking about, and fee structures are different depending on where you are. Downtown Austin versus rural East Texas, SS and I were talking about, is going to be very different. The last thing, if you're not insured and if you're doing it on a wing and a prayer, or you're just starting, have a hive removal agreement. And it can be just in English, and just, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. You have to decide, am I gonna be repairing afterward or just cutting holes? I'm a just cut holes guy. I just make a mess and I say I'm gonna do as little as possible, and you're gonna sign right here to that effect. The other piece is bees are gonna stick around, so you better be prepared to manage what I'm dealing with this client who's got the lift, there's still bees on the site that I did a removal from a while ago. How do you manage that? So I started bee removal with a club up in San Marcos, and the guys there were adamant. We had a list, so we'd put the call out on Facebook, and then people would claim them. And the ethic among our group there was that if you start a bee removal, you finish it, right? You don't hunt, you just don't poke a hole and I can't figure it out and I'll come back later. You better really if you're going to get into it, don't stir bees up and cause some more of a problem. Really solve their problem. That's the goal. And or get help. Get a mentor. Get to your club. Find someone. Every town's got a lunatic like me. Every club's got a couple people do removals. Get with people who are doing removals. Tag along. Work for free. That's what I did. Then the guy retired and just handed all his removals to me, and I was instantly in business. It was kind of wild. So we're going to talk a little bit about removal types. I think of 4 removal types: swarm, capture, cutout, forced abscond, and trap out. So I got a little video. It's about 5 minutes. I'm just going to play it when I'm going to talk you through it. Basic swarm capture. I'm a bucket man. I shake swarms into buckets. I dump them on a hive. Sometimes I try to find the queen in the bucket. That's quite often lucky. This was in an evening. I dump it on the hive. I shake everybody off the limb. I might put some honey bandit on the limb so it smells bad up on the limb, and then they're inclined to go back in. Wait till closer to dark. They're fanning. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. That means I know I got them. Swarms are like the gateway drug. This is the next step. This is when you know you're starting to lose it. Water meters. So whoever designed water meters made them for bees. I don't know who did it. I'd fix it if it weren't so beneficial to me. So here we're just going to smoke. I take my veil off because I want to be famous on TikTok, and it just hasn't happened yet, but I'm trying. Here I'm able to get in, find the queen. That's kind of lucky. I was able to grab her, put her in I use a marking tube. But a little water meter hive, we're going to be able to tear that apart. I use a vacuum, and we'll talk about vacuums. I'm a big fan of the vac. Now we're stepping it up. So this is it's two sections of fence against each other, and the bees have built up in there. So minimal demolition, but I'm able to get right in there, get bees. I love hives like this. I've been there for a while. Pretty simple removal. So if you're new and starting, that kind of access is definitely a plus versus cutting into somebody's wall. I didn't see the queen. A lot of times I'm vacuuming, moving really quick. This is a shot of hiving up. So taking from the vac, I'll make this box really hospitable. I'll put a lot of drawn comb in there. I'll put some open comb with young larvae, and then I'll dump everybody out in front. A lot of times I'll see the queen when I do that, but sometimes I don't. Shed floors. Now we're ramping up in the intensity of the job and the demolition. Shed floors, really common one. I do them all the time. I'll cut a hatch out, take everything. If I can, I love to move the hive away 20 or 30 feet. Why is that? The flyers, I'll go back in there, so I can take the nurse bees from the hive, maybe find the queen, and then I'll vacuum up. So it's grunt work. It's not easy. Here's a bigger removal. So a wall removal where the client said this place is a dump. You can do whatever you want here. So I'm able to tear that wall open. Old hive full of tons of honey. Getting all that material out. I'm in the brood now. See that capped brood, vacuuming up all around that, and then again vacuuming up on the outside. So, and always try to clean up, make it look better than when you got there. That's always my goal. And here again, I'm hiving up. There, I found the queen, and it's not a great, but she's right up there. So a lot of times I find the queen when I hive them up. Particularly if I'm reaching up into a dark cavity to vacuum, I don't have a chance to see her. I'm moving so quick. Here's a classic one. The bees were coming in to soffit, but I looked inside with a thermal camera we'll talk about, and that's where they were. So I plasticed off the whole interior of the room, and then I go in and cut. And then the key there is making it real nice. And in fact, that one I had to go up in the attic and then I had honey and insulation all over me, so that was lovely. But here, forced abscond. We'll get into forced absconds. A tree, big old tree. This isn't coming down. We're not going to cut this tree down for the bees. So the procedure is called a forced abscond. We're going to make it very uncomfortable for the bees with smoke, drill holes above and below, and I'm just working it. You can see as I work, it just gets darker and darker. So this is not, the bees do not want to come out right away. They like it in there. So forced abscond, I'll be honest, forced absconds are really challenging to me. There's some people in TBA who are really, Steve Butler and Justin Russell and Brandon Fahrenkamp, real good forced abscond people, and they're going to come down to New Braunfels and teach me because I need some help with it because they're tough to do. I find them kind of challenging. You had a question. So the question was, what kind of FLIR am I using? I bought it like 4 years ago. It's the handheld standalone model with a picture. I don't use it to take images typically. I will just use it to see it, to get a read. But that's a vital tool, and I'll get to some tools in a second. So, okay, we'll just wing through these different types real quick. Swarm capture again. Okay, swarm capture is freebies. It is actually freebies. So that's worth doing. It's fun as heck. It's the gateway drug. I love loppers. If I'm dealing with any kind of limbs and trees, commonly on a small limb, you can cut that off and shake the bees into a box. I've been having trouble with these lately. I've put some queens into these little clips, and I've had them get out, which is kind of disappointing. When you find a queen, you feel good about locking her in. So I've been just using my marking tube. It's one of the only times I ever use a brush, except for harvesting honey, is on swarm captures. I love just a bucket, like I said, or a drop cloth, and I'll put that in front of a hive, dump the bees in front of it, and let them go in. And swarm capture, I don't charge for it. They're just free bees. So if it's too far away from me, I don't do it. I refer it out to another beekeeper. Cutouts, okay, this is my most common deal, is when you can get to all the goodies, right? When you can open up a space, when you can cut I call it the factory, when you can get mama and all the work, all the babies and those nice nurse bees and the brood and all the food out. You typically one and done, right? You can get in, get out, and be gone. Some removals where I come in, look around, make sure the area is secure, and work quick. There's sometimes where I know there's too much exposure around me. It's a real busy neighborhood. So I call it cuidado tape. I'll bring some cuidado tape. I'll knock on doors. I'll talk to the homeowner. I want to make sure that anybody, especially kids and dogs and animals in the area, are not going to be affected if I stir up some terrible bees. I also, when I do a removal, I'm ready to roll. When I get in there, I'm gonna be vacuuming. I'm gonna stir the bees up when I move in, but I'm gonna solve the problem as quick as I can, so we don't have angry bees for hours and hours. Yes, so this is one of my favorite tools. The thermal camera just measures surface temperature, gives you a picture. Looks pretty cool. The client loves it. Question? Oh, this is EpiPen. I carry an EpiPen. Just liability-wise, it's good to have. There's an off-brand EpiPen I carry now. I got a real deal on it. It's worth doing. If you ever go to Mexico, you can buy EpiPens cheap. They're just good to have. So the thermal camera measures surface temperature. So let's say there were bees in this ceiling, hanging up on the panel above. Well, if I hit this and there's bees behind it, they're not clinging to that surface, so they'll be harder to see. But if there's bees on this, let's say this was a wood floor with space underneath, the bees are hanging on that floor, they're attached to the surface. My thermal camera measures surface temperature, so it's going to see that heat signature right away. Boom. I'll with things like shed floors or a second story home removal from an interior, when they're in between the first and second floor, I can just mark it out. This is where I'm going to cut. This is exactly what I'm going to cut, and then that works great. I have a borescope. Borescope and the stethoscope, it's really just so that the client thinks I know what I'm doing. This guy's got some tools. He must know something. No, the borescope, typically the borescope, if I don't find a heat signature, if I don't see exactly where I'm going to bore, but usually if I hit the right spot, bees are going to pour out. And when the bees pour out, I'm in the right spot. So if I'll drill a little hole, I'll poke the borescope up in there. If I see comb, I'm in. I'm in bees. I know I can get to them. So this is what I really need. This is what I wish my life looked like. It doesn't quite look like that, but more like this. So I feel like my cordless toolkit, whatever you use, DeWalt, Milwaukee, whatever, Ryobi, it's just so valuable to me. I used to have generators and corded tools, and it's just so nice to have that. Your basic set of hand tools and a little carpentry experience, I'm really good at taking things apart. I asked my wife, I'm not very good at putting it all back together, so I love doing demolition. It's very therapeutic too. But good set of hand tools. I like a fishing knife, upper center, for cutting comb. My fishing knife is dull. I don't need a super sharp knife to cut comb, so I got an old fishing knife that I'm just using to sort of scrape comb. I have a whole series of scrapers. I took one of my wife's butter knives and I cut it so I could reach up behind comb, and that really made her pretty mad, but it works really nicely. Flat bar, I feel like I use a flat bar for everything in bee removal, removing siding, prying, that kind of thing. And a little first aid kit, because you're going to get dinged up like I am. Next important tool is the vacuum, and there's a lot of schools of thought on vacuums. So I started off with a setup like this. This is like a homemade vac. So it's basically a canister with a source outside of it, and it sucks the bees into a small canister, right? If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a YouTube video about how to make a canister vac. There's the hive body, or the Colorado bee vac, or like a homemade Colorado bee vac. It's basically like a hive body, and it pulls bees into a hive body. They work. I don't use them. That would be hard. A lot of the jobs I do up high, right? I don't have to carry or have really long hoses. I'm not here to pimp out Tony Andrick's All My Bees vac, but this thing rocks. I mean, it's just they're expensive, but they work really nicely. So I did all my work with a homemade canister vac for years, and it really didn't cost me much. So it's very doable. But if you're doing a lot of these, I've thought about designing something and going to competition with Tony or something. But he's got a really nice product, and he does a really nice job with it, and it works. So getting into this, really analyzing the problem is the most important thing. So a lot of times with particular structures, we're trying to figure out what's happening behind a wall, right? We can't see, and unless the person says you can just tear that out, we're gonna have to sort of figure it out. So don't hunt and peck. Bee removers, and I've done it, are famous for I cut a little 4 inch by 4 inch hole here, and it's just totally empty. And I cut another one here. Oh, it's totally empty there too. Dang. And I cut another one here. Try to avoid that, right? Try to really dig down, use your deductive reasoning, and think about, well, how could that be built? The joists could go this way, or let's bore a hole and poke our camera in there and see what kind of spaces. Bees need a space. You got to find what space they're in. They're not going to be in an attic. They don't like attics. Attics are too hot. So if it's things like soffit, wall, underneath a floor, but determining that before you do anything too invasive. Get behind the bees whenever you can, right? So I find particularly the feral bees, the Africanized bees, they'll run to the dark. So I'll start a removal. Let's say it's a second story removal between two floors. I get access to them, but the bees go 10 or 15 feet back. So sometimes if I can do that removal from the inside with drywall or a floor, then I'm behind the bees so that I've opened up a floor or wall, and I'm just, for the first 20 minutes, I'm just vacuuming up. I've got the whole hive. I've probably got the queen right there, and the bees have nowhere to run. They're running to me, and they're running away from me out, and they're going out front of the hive. So that's helpful. I love this thing, the little zip wall, like doing an interior. It's like struts, and you can use plastic to kind of plastic off an area. Like I said, drywall is certainly easier to repair than exterior siding, brick, for example. So, but really, communicating with the homeowner what you're going to do, I think, is the most important thing. So, I get in there. I have an old guy, Al, who should be here today, but he's my brains. He's pretty smart. So I bring Al out, and we'll look at it together, and where we should go, and we'll figure it out. And then before we do anything, we'll have a plan, and we tell the homeowner. We want to tell the homeowner, I'm going to cut here, I think, and I'm not going to fix it. When I'm done, I'm going to plastic it all in, that kind of thing. So just really communicating with them what you're going to do, and then doing it. Stick to the plan and communicating how that goes. I'm a big fan of this stuff. So after I'm done removing, I'll use, I'm not going to use pesticide, but I'm going to use something where the comb attaches to wood. You can scrape that down, but think about honeycomb, wax, and wood. It's like a bowling alley. It's just there. It's not going to go away. So I'll hit it with spray paint. And once there are no bees there, scrape it down. I'll hit it with just spray paint. Are you buttoning back up or not? That's the other question. I go to a lot of jobs where it's been foamed up. Somebody did a bee removal 10 years ago and it's been foamed up, and it's the same situation. So I don't button back up, so I can't really guarantee bees coming back or not, right? So the guys who back up or who button up, I think are smarter, because they can say, hey, I guarantee that work because I closed that in and you won't have bees for a year, that kind of thing. But the other thing is, I'll be back. A lot of times I got to go back. So if I do a removal during the middle of the day, what's going to happen at night? All those bees that went to HEB to go get some sugar are going to come back, and they're going to form a big cluster. So a lot of times I'll just plan it, and I'll figure it into the cost of the work that I'm going to probably have to come back. If I can do it that evening at dusk, that's great. If I can do the removal of an evening, that's even better. Or just wait and see. I tell the client, let's just wait. Give me a day or two, as much as a week, frankly, unless someone's getting stung, and make sure the bees are gone. Forced abscond, again, when you can't get to the bees, right? When we're not going to cut down a 200-year-old oak tree to get to bees, we have to force the bees out. So like a situation like this, actually, they had an opening here. I drilled a hole down here, forced smoke, and just waited. And those bees actually hadn't been there for very long. So they just poured right out, and I was able to just come in with the vacuum and vacuum them up. Forced absconds, I like a paddle bit. For trees, I like a paddle bit, 3/4 inch, 7/8, 1 inch, whatever. Nice, but with like a long stem. And make sure it's new and sharp, right? And then I have a longer borescope, which I actually really do use for trees. With the tree, I have to try to figure out how big the cavity is. I want to get below it, and I want to get above it. And then I want to force smoke into the bottom. I use a funnel. So I'll force smoke in, and then now I use a funnel. I'll put the funnel in the hole, and then I'll take a leaf blower, stick it in the funnel, and blow. And that pushes that smoke that I'm churning in. And it's a long process. I recommend a wireless speaker and classic rock. That's my favorite. And I just sit there and puff my smoker into that cavity. And I don't want to kill the bees, but I want to make them really not like it and definitely want to leave. So like I said, a work in progress for me for learning forced absconds. And there's people in this organization that are like Zen masters with it. Bees react to smell. So honey bandit, which is flammable, so you have to be careful. I also use tea tree. Some people will put tea tree in the smoker so that the smoker and the smoke smells like tea tree. Bees hate tea tree. This specific product, undercoating, I use for trees, particularly oaks, which can get oak wilt if you cut and leave them raw. So you can use that pruning spray, or I find the undercoating works really well. It looks good too. And then I button up. So I learned this from an arborist. So I'll take number 8 hardware cloth to close everything in, and then I'll put a flap. If the tree has an opening to the sky, it fills with water. So I'll put a flap there, and again, that's something to communicate with the client. But that's a nice little trick. My hope is to improve the health of the tree as well. So I'm not leaving them with a healthy tree that's not filling with water. I've bored a hole in a tree once, and it drained like a bathtub. It was just completely full of water. So you want to make sure that it's not continuing to fill with water. The flap is just tin. I'll just take roofing material and just cut a tin flap and use roofing nails. No, not felt, like metal, corrugated. Last is trap out. I've gotten away from these. This is where you kind of put a cone over the hive so the bees can come out, and then they can't get back in. I've stopped doing these. They're just too time intensive. The only time I will do it, and this was a recent one, and it doesn't look as high from here, but it's really high. I'm at the edge of my ladder. I'm like up like this, and if we can't do a lift or something, I'm going to set up a trap out, and then you leave it. And the homeowner has to be able to tolerate having bees for a while. So trap out is a cone over the hive entrance where the bees go out the cone, and when they come back in, they try to go in right where they're used to going in, and it's closed because you put the cone there. Then you hang a box there, and you wait. And you wait. Think about bee math, 21 days for a worker bee. So if that queen just laid an egg, you got 21 days. So I say 3 weeks to a month to wait. I've gotten away from these. I prefer to do a forced abscond wherever possible. And then hiving them up, make it really inviting for the bees. I use some brood from other hives if I've got it. Open larvae, so young eggs and larvae, just in case they don't have a queen, then they can in fact try to make a queen. Feed. These are bees that have just been through your vacuum. They've been through trauma, so they need a little bit of love. And then I check them periodically in the days afterwards, see if they're queen right, see what's going on, and hopefully they stick around. Some people lock them in. I don't. You can put a queen excluder over the front if you know you have the queen. I don't. I just let the bees figure it out. Typically, if it's inviting enough, they'll stay. But that's one option. Swarms, it's not a bad idea to lock her in for a few days till she lays an egg. Once she lays an egg, she's not leaving. So, and then also, if you're catching feral bees, have a place to put them far away. So I call it bee-hab. It's way out in the boons near a quarry, and I can put any variety of bee out there, spicy or not, and that's nice to have. It's nice to have multiple yards anyway, just so you can move bees from one to the other, do splits, all that kind of stuff. And then in time, do you keep your feral queens? And we could talk all day about this, but I've gotten into the requeening business because I put bees on other people's property, so I can't put where I live, the bees are spicy. The wild bees I catch are definitely spicy. So stay organized. Process your comb. I use a melter, a solar wax melter. Feed it back to the bees and then melt it. It's a messy business, so don't be like me. Every month I'll stop and take everything out of the bee mobile, and it's all honey coated and a total mess. If I did that with every job, I'd be smarter. And if I stay ahead of my mess, it's definitely a lot better. Stay ahead with hardware. So if you put it out there that you're the bee guy, you're going to get calls. If you build it, they will call. And you've seen the guys out front, Chris Barnes and Rex Smith and Ed, real good group of guys, and is Brittany Fetterman, really good beekeepers. We've got this our state organization. We're relatively new. We want to be a professional organization. We're connected to TBA. We want to stay connected to TBA and lobbying efforts at TBA. But we meet monthly. We have a little professionals corner. It's a Zoom meeting. It does cost to be a member, but it's been a lot of fun. I'm learning stuff from other bee removers. We're like the pirates of the beekeeping world. Yarr! We're always like figuring out all kinds of weird things to do. And so bee removers, I find, have good ideas and stories and things to share. So I'm about out of time. I could take a question or two and then wrap it up. Yes, sir. Good point. So starting off in bee removal, don't be like me. I did a bee removal by myself after watching YouTube, and I did everything wrong. It wasn't dangerous. so much as I just was an idiot. And I highly recommend getting involved with a club. Every club's got bee removers. And I went out with guys who'd been doing, Chuck Rayburn, who's no longer with us, he took me out on one of my first bee removals. And he said, I hate doing this, but I'll show you, kid. And he took his time to do that. So, yeah, get a mentor. Don't go out by yourself, for sure. Swarm capture, maybe, but good point. Thank you. Yeah, anything else? Yeah, so the wild goose chase, the anything but bees, sorry, I can't help you. I mean, there are bee removal professionals who are exterminators. There are bee removal professionals who work hand in hand with an exterminator. That's just not my thing. If it's yellow jackets, nobody rescues yellow jackets. So you have no options. So yeah, ground hornets, all that. But I don't touch it, and I'm not qualified. I'm not a pesticide applicator. So. Good question. So in a cutout, how much comb do I save? I used to save a ton. My mentor showed me we'd fill a whole box. I've stopped doing that. I go and I'll take one good frame of capped, partially capped and uncapped, with that brood pheromone, right? It smells like mama, smells like babies that need to be fed. And I just cut it into a medium frame, and I'll do one or two of those, and then I'll feed. And sometimes I'll take a real nice frame from another hive, even with bees on it, make sure I don't get a queen, and I'll just put that in there, and then I'll dump the bees in, and then rock and roll. So, yeah, and feed. And then I'm pretty relentless if they don't take, if it's just, if I come back in 3 days and there's a baseball-sized cluster of bees, they get mixed with another colony, like, right away. Because I used to nurture them along, come on, every little hive, save the bees. It's just, they need that critical mass to really roll. If they don't have it, it's just a waste of time. So I'm pretty merciless. If they don't make, and there's no queen or whatever, newspaper on top of another hive that's decent sized, marry them, get them working. So, yeah. Good deal. So did I talk everybody out of it? Nobody's going into this business, I hope. And if you are, please move to New Braunfels and take over my... Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Yep.